Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Hey gang, there's a story here on Zero Hedge I want to share with you, but I'm not going to read much from it because, as you all know, I tend to get a little long-winded in my commentary. But it's an important commentary to understand the history or the etymology of why we have all these trade tariff woes with China. Because I was actually lobbying against what was happening in 2000 with allowing China to have most favored nation trading status within the WTO. So I was in the thick of it back then. So I do have perspective to provide for you. I saw this happen. But this is a story full of Trump tweets, and he's basically trying to put a positive spin on trade with China. And he's saying that our great patriot farmers will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of what's happening right now. That's exactly what Roy Blunt said in 2000 to have China in the WTO. He said literally Missouri would benefit. And by the way, Roy Blunt was in 2000 a representative from the state of Missouri to the House of Representatives. He has since become a senator to the U.S. Senate. He is, my understanding is, he is retiring. He will not run for re-election. But I have been, basically a thorn in his side since 2000. But I paid a dear price for that, and we'll tell that story later. But I just want to tell you that our farmers will be one of the biggest beneficiaries to what is happening now. Is exactly what they said in 2000 on why we needed to allow China MFT status. Okay, I want to get to a different tweet though, and it starts up here. And we have to be allowed to make up some of the tremendous ground we have lost to China on trade since the ridiculous one-sided formation of the WTO. It will all happen, and it will be much faster than people think. Okay, so this is where my commentary begins. And once again, I'll link this down below because there's a whole string of Trump tweets in here about trade that you all can read. But back in 2000, there were polls conducted all over the United States, and indeed in individual states as well, about whether or not to give China, and by the way, China was already in the WTO in 2000, but what they got was they were elevated to most favored nation trading status. And what that meant is they were getting, because they were considered a developing country, they were given tariff deals that were really, really good. In other words, people who were importing stuff from China would enjoy extremely low tariffs on the products, in some cases, no tariffs at all. So that was very beneficial to China. That made them much more sought after to actually trade with because of quote unquote cheaper products. Now, it didn't translate into cheaper products, and that's what I'm about to talk about. What happened is, and I'm going to talk about two men today, Roy Blunt and Mitt Romney. And I know a lot of people are concerned because I tend to bash a little bit more on Republicans than I do Democrats, but I will give you the caveat. I expect Democrats to be communist, so I'm not really surprised by their actions. The reason why I bash on Republicans is because their platform is the exact opposite of what they're doing. And I've explained that on previous broadcasts. I am a libertarian. So from my perspective, the Republicans and Democrats are on the left side of moderate. So that is, they're both in the left side of the spectrum because they're into fascism, crony capitalism, corporatism, socialism. Both parties are in that camp, believe it or not. So, but I know that offends some people when I say that, but it is absolutely true. Once again, if you start dissecting it and looking at it through the lens of the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Okay, I digressed again, and I'm trying to keep my podcast shorter. So let me get into the data here. So in 2000, all the polls were showing the vast majority of Americans did not want China to have most favored nation trading status. Those who were paying attention, by the way. I was one of them. I did it on human rights issues, and I also did it on financial issues because I knew we were going to lose jobs. Now, Roy Blunt and others said that's all right, could be because we will gain other jobs. And then his take on that was farming and livestock. So he said those are the jobs we're going to gain in Missouri by doing this because they're going to be buying so much pork and chicken and soybeans from us, here in Missouri. So now go to the other side of it. which was the underbelly of the beast. And that was Mitt Romney through Bain Capital. Now, what Bain Capital did is actually set up a deal right before, even before China was allowed most favored nation trading status. And he set up a deal to make sure that American taxpayers paid for the moving or construction or what have you of all the companies that actually went to China from America, and American corporations that were already in other countries that moved their manufacturing plants to China through write-downs or write-offs on their taxes. So in other words, the taxpayers ended up footing the bill for these corporations, these very large, rich corporations, to actually move to China. So here's what we got in 2000. In 2000, when China was admitted into the WTO, even though America didn't want it, and I'll get into that in another second here, we lost jobs, and we had to pay for the corporations to even take the manufacturing plants and facilities to China. So it was a double whammy of a butt kicking to the American taxpayer to allow China into most favored nation trading status in the WTO. Okay, so why was there so much support in Congress when there wasn't with the American people? Well, I can explain that from one man's point of view, and that's Roy Blunt, because I was looking into this at the time and I was fighting it. And Roy Blunt received an enormous amount of money from Amway and Walmart for his 2000 campaign to rerun as a representative. Well, the fact of the matter is, I don't know that he had anyone running against him that even posed a threat in 2000. So, but he did get an enormous amount of money. My memory fails on the numbers, but I was thinking it was something like $800,000 he got between those two corporations that were pushing so hard for American jobs to literally go to China, to where the cheap labor was. So that is the etymology of it, gang. Fascism, crony capitalism, corporatism, take your pick. Both parties engage in this, but I wasn't looking at anyone else. I was just looking at Roy Blunt at the time. He did not represent Missouri, just like most politicians don't. They represent the corporations that are padding their pockets, and Roy Blunt is absolutely no exception to that. Mitt Romney padded his pockets too, because he lobbied and was paid for by the corporations that actually gave the politicians money. And this is a fact, guys. You can actually look up this data. I don't have time to do that right now, but that was Mitt Romney through Bain Capital. Did a lot of damage. These are horrible men. I mean, let's just be honest. Mitt Romney and Roy Blunt are horrible people, and we shouldn't support them in anything they do. We shouldn't give them positions of power because everything they do seems to actually hurt Americans. So, and they're allowed to continue and allowed to function. It just goes on, and they're part of a very, very corrupt political system where the American people are never represented, and then they always have to foot the bill for whatever sweetheart deals they get for the corporations. Okay, I think it's rant off now. I don't think I forgot anything. But the important points to remember is China was already in the WTO in 2000, but what they did get in 2000 was elevated to most favored nation trading status, which gave them much better tariff deals than countries they were dealing with, because it was quote unquote a developing country. That's actually what they called it, developing country. Well, they're fully developed now. And when we went to China in 2000, the average worker there was making the equivalent of 25 cents an hour US dollars. So 25 cents an hour for a Chinese worker versus paying an American factory worker 15 plus half of their Social Security, health insurance, not to mention the cost of doing business in the United States, which is huge because of all the bureaucracies, the EPA, all these other things. Now, am I saying this is a bad thing? I'm saying no. I'm just saying we cannot compete with nations who will not do this. There's no competition. This is why we keep losing our jobs to other countries. But indeed, now we're starting to lose our jobs to robots, and so is China. So that is coming down the pike, folks, and I will literally do future podcasts about that. That will be the next big wave of job losses that'll happen in the next 5 to 10 years, will be to automation. Okay, gang, that's all I have for this particular story. If you find it useful or helpful, instructive, informative, please give us a like. Give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. We put out a lot of very interesting podcasts. And of course, share the information. Share, share, share. We appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us. God bless you all.